Hello and welcome back to Suspended Fanimation. I am your host, Dennis Batholkis, and this is Doom Patrol Season 1, Episode 8, Damn Patrol. Thank you, everybody, for joining me. And, of course, I'm going to cough straight on out, which I love doing when I first start off. Excuse me. God. I thought I'd gotten that out of there. Yes, it is. There we go. Get a little bit of water in there to clean up the pipes. Yes, it is super me. Yes, this is Superman right there. Yeah, another really good episode. I mean, damn. I mean, I was wondering how they're going to do this one. When I'd seen that they were going to do this, this character, I was really wondering how they were going to do this. And damn, that's all I can say. So before I start here, spoiler alert, I am going to spoil the episode. If you haven't watched the episode, go and watch it. Come on back. And, we can talk about it later. You can put down in the chat down below, down in the comment section. And, I always answer those things down there. So there we go. Thank you, Viking Bitch, for the paddle. And, yeah, still a lot more introspection from the team on this one. And, they're still pretty shaken up. Mr. Nobody has, rocked them to the core at this point. And, they really haven't gotten any further in finding where Niles is at this point either. And I don't know if they ever will until, they get their shit together. But you know who does have their shit together? Who's the person who I least thought was going to have it? Was Rita. Rita actually has her shit together, and I will get to that in a little bit. Yeah, it really is setting up. I agree with you, Viking Bitch. It really is setting up just how powerful Mr. Nobody is. He's not the joke in the comics. In the comics, yes, he would fuck with people's minds, but it was kind of more of a joke than anything else. It was mind manipulation, and so it was always mind manipulation. They have a really good joke about that in the Teen Titans Go movie, if you ever get a chance to see it, which is hilariously funny, by the way. If you ever get a chance to see that animated Teen Titans Go movie that just came out last year, I just saw it for the first time and was laughing my ass off throughout the entire thing. Well worth it. Yeah, really, Joe Greer. So every year, this is one of the hidden panels that no one really goes to. The Teen Titans Go panel, they have all the voice actors up there. And the actors up there, when they start talking, it's kind of adult in nature, but they keep it clean for the kids because there's a lot of kids in the audience, and a lot of the stuff flies over the kids' heads. But it's actually pretty damn funny. There's a lot of adult jokes in that show in nature, just in the way it is. I know I'm kind of diverging off of it here before I go into Doom Patrol, but yeah, it's one of the best panels at Comic-Con. I shit you not, by the way. It is one of the best panels of, someone who went with me this last year or a couple of years ago didn't believe me. And we had to sit through that panel in order to get to another panel that we wanted to and turn that person around on that completely. Yeah. There we go. I'm forced to watch Teen Titans Go. Well, Morks, there could be worse things to watch. Like you could be watching My Little Pony. You could be watching, Paw Patrol. Yeah, there's all those kind of things. Yeah, Fanobi is he, do you know where he is, Viking Bitch? You have him on tracker, don't you? You can call that up and just your little tracker and know where he's at, right? Oh, you're forced to watch MLP. What's MLP, Marks? I'm not versed in that one. I'm sorry. Yeah, I don't know what that is. There's a lot of kid shows out there that really suck. But My Little Pony. Okay, there we go. Yeah. Wow. So yeah, there's a lot of shit stuff out there, but there's some good stuff that's out there too. So let me get to Doom Patrol. Exactly, Doom Patrol. So we see this guy wandering out in the woods with an earpiece and a monocular, I guess you could say. And he comes upon this street with some buildings in the middle of nowhere. And he is in contact with some other guys that are in a van. And they say, "Do you see it, Agent Wilson?" He says, "I see it. I've made contact." And you see him walk into this street that's in the middle of nowhere, and there's people that are having a party and all this kind of stuff. And we see leaves that fly up in the air and says, "Welcome, friend." It spells it out, which is kind of weird. I'm like, okay. And then this banner comes across and asks, "Where are you from?" And he looks over to the side and he sees this building that says it's Peeping Tom's Perpetual Cabaret. And it's inviting him in. The doors open up and he gets word on the earphone. They're saying, "Is everything okay?" And he goes, "Just a minute." And that's when they come driving in. We see them shaking around in the van and all this stuff, and they go driving in to go see where he's at, and the town's gone at that point. Like, son of a bitch, he's gone, kind of thing. So we see Cyborg covering over at this point Cliff's armhole that he had, welding something on top of it, drilling it in as Cliff is laying there, and Cliff says, "Have you ever had a rat crawl inside of you?" And Vic's like, "No, I haven't." He goes, "Do I smell?" He goes, "You tell me if I smell, right?" And he goes, "You don't smell, you're fine." And basically Cliff is freaking out a bit too, because he had a rat inside of him. He keeps talking about the smell, and Vic's like, "I checked all your circuits, everything's good. Your power supply is good as well. Everything's good." And so Cliff then switches over to the topic of Jane and the painting. He goes, "Are you freaked out about the painting that Jane brought back?" And he's like, "No, not at all." And he goes, "Well, I would be. I'd be really freaked out if I saw that kind of painting about me." And he's just going on and on. And he's basically bugging Vic about this. And Vic's like, "I don't want to talk about it." And Cliff just keeps pounding on him about this, saying that how she's crazy, she's going after him, all this kind of stuff. And Vic just turns and walks away from Cliff at this point because he's done doing his work. And he walks away from Cliff. And Cliff, of course, is just getting crazier and crazier at this point. Hey, everybody. I'll get to the chat in a little bit here. So we see Larry dreaming about someplace called the Ant Farm, and the year is 1963. And he's being wheeled in a hyperbaric chamber, and he wakes up, and we see this. He's asking where he is, and this guy named Charles Forsyth says he's at the ant farm, and that he's going to, they want to harness the energy that's inside him, the radioactive energy that's inside Larry. And Larry's like, "That's not what I signed up for." And he goes, No, you don't understand. Your service is compulsory. And then they gas him. And as he's being gassed and going under, he wakes up in his room. And we see him, he opens up his drawer and he pulls out this patch that has a key and a sword crossing. So the Ant Farm is kind of an odd name, Ant Farm Girl. I was kind of wondering that myself, where that came from. So we see that it's pretty much the same as Agent Wilson's too, by the way. So Agent Wilson that we saw in the very beginning there, going into this town, he had that same patch on there on his arm. So we know that these two things are connected now at this point. Jane ends up calling the manor, and she's leaving a message on the answering machine. It's the answering machine they actually have in the manor. And as she starts to leave it, we hear Cliff like boom, 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 running over, and he grabs the phone and he's like, "Jane?" And she answers like, "Yeah." And at first Jane doesn't know who she is. And when he says it's Cliff, she's like, "Oh, Cliffy, hi, how you doing? Tell Rita that I'm having a party over at Doug's house tonight, and she's invited." And she's like, "Okay, bye," and hangs up. And Rita walks in at this point and goes, well, actually, before she hangs up, Cliff goes, "Jane, are we okay?" She goes, "Yeah, everything's cool beans." And then just, and hangs up at that point. And then Rita walks in and says, "Was that Jane? How is she doing?" She goes, I don't know. She said cool beans." And Rita's like, "Oh, shit. It's Karen." And she's the worst out of the 64. And basically, Karen only shows up when Jane is at her lowest. And we find out that she's obsessed with rom-coms from the 90s, and she always goes back to Doug, even though she's broken up with him dozens of times. He keeps coming back to her. She keeps coming back He keeps coming back to her, yes. So we don't know why this is. So we see her going back to Doug, and it's raining outside, and she ends up getting him to take her back for some god unknown reason. And it's a weird scene where she's just outside kind of saying, why don't you come with me? And he's like, no. And then she trips in the mud. He's like, all right. And he brings, he goes back with her. It's a very weird little scene for a second. So we cut back to Doom Manor, and we've got Larry and Vic are talking, about Niles at first, and then they get a ring at the doorbell, and they go out to go and see what it is because they're right by the door there, and there's nobody there. But there's a box with a note on top of it, and the note says, help, Niles, which I thought was kind of a weird writing, the way it's sitting there. Yes, that falling rain was very staged because it was sunny as all hell on that one, Penn Farm Girl. But yeah, I went through that I didn't bother with it. And the box has a cake with a map of Springfield, Ohio, with Danny Street kind of in red on there. And written on the inside of the box is Danny's Cakes, an address, and Cyborg, of course, accesses his maps and says there's no Danny Street in Springfield, Ohio. And he goes, well, I guess we're going to Danny's Cakes. And that's when they appear at the street there, which is kind of weird. We don't get any kind of word. They were actually teleported there. So that was kind of a weird, they didn't really explain that one too well, but they were actually teleported there by Danny. So I don't know, I'll find out who Danny is here in a second. So they're walking through these streets, and the streets are kind of, boarded up buildings, all this kind of stuff. And then we see Danny's Cakes, and the words in the window actually reform and say, where's Niles? And kind of a weird thing that, Larry goes, that's kind of weird. The cake shop is asking us that. And then they're walking down the street a little bit further, and some steam comes up out of the grate and says, cat got your tongue? Because it keeps asking, where Niles is at this point. And they're not answering. And then we see a sign that kind of spins with a little arrow on it. It says, this way. And they go over to the cabaret. We see the cabaret that Agent Wilson walked in earlier. And they go inside, and there are a bunch of drag queens on stage that are performing. And a drag queen takes Larry and Vic over to a table and sits them down. Yeah. So kind of weird. It's Peeping Tom's Perpetual Cabaret, by the way, is what it's called. And the head performer, who we find out is, excuse me, there we go. Morally corrupt. Yeah, morally corrupt. There we go. Puts a spotlight on them and says that they're new people in, and they're friends of Niles Calder. And Vic asked how they know that, who they are. And she goes, well, Danny knows. And they're like, who is Danny? And Morales says, Danny is all around us. Yeah. And, he's Danny the Street. And they're like, oh, Danny the Street. Okay, that's kind of weird. What does Danny want? What does he want from us? And that's when Morales says, Danny is genderqueer, and they use non-binary pronouns. And Vic is kind of shaking his head for a minute. He's like, non-binary pronouns? She goes, oh, what's the matter? Robot boy not know anything other than binary? And then it says, how about 101101? And that's when Vic kind of gets a little sassy. He goes, hold on a moment. I'm trying to access my middle finger emoji. And that's when Morley goes, oh, I like this one. This one's salty. Always follow the cake. Exactly, Stanley Tweedle. But the cake is a lie, by the way, too. So, yeah, when I forgot about that line. I actually had written it down, too. Is that, Larry had told them, always follow the cake, Vic, always follow the cake. And I immediately first said, the cake is a lie. A vagina. A vagina? A vagina. Oh, there we go. Yeah, that is a good nickname. Yeah, we used to have, so in San Francisco, we had these nuns on roller skates called the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence, and they all had different names that were like that. yeah, they're all drag queens, but they dress as nuns with face paint, like clown face paint, and roller skates. Sorry, it was a little aside, but there we go. Yeah, that's always a lot of fun, during Halloween and stuff like that. They would actually run the Castro Halloween Street Fair or the Halloween Street thing that was going on when it used to happen until a whole bunch of people fucked it up. Anyway, so we also find out from Maura Lee that the people that live in the town are called Dannizens. And they're people that Danny picks up from all over the world. They're people who just don't belong anywhere else. And they find their place on Danny Street. And that's where they end up living. They end up finding their happiness there. And then the performer tells them to ask Danny a question. And they're like, okay. So, Larry asks, Niles? And it says, yes. Actually, the answers appear on the curtain. Yes, I know Niles. And then, where is Niles? And they say, well, they tell Danny that Niles is missing. And that's when Danny goes, well, let's talk outside, is what it says at that point. So we go back to Rita and Cliff, and they show up at Doug's house, and Karen meets Cliff, for the first time. And says, oh, hi, Cliffy, how you doing? And invites Rita in and won't invite Cliff in at this point. So basically, Jane didn't have nice things to say about that. Didn't have nice things to say about Cliff, I guess. Or didn't say anything at all. She really wasn't too clear on that. She said, Jane told me about you. And then he says, oh, really? What'd she say? And then Karen gets this kind of faraway look in her eye. That's not a smile. It's one of those fake smiles. He goes, oh, that bad? So, yeah, there we go. So she basically says, I would invite you in, Cliff, but you're a little weird and creepy, and I need tonight to go off pretty well because Doug's parents are here, and they're not happy. Yeah, but Rita can come in, and she basically, Cliff tries to apologize. He goes, wait a minute. He goes, Cliff tries to apologize to all of them. He goes, I want to apologize to all of you. And he goes, I mean it. I'm really, really sorry. And she kind of looks at him and goes, uh-huh, and closes the door in his face. It's like, wow, man, that's some pretty fucked up stuff. So we go back to Vic and Larry, and they go to talk to Danny outside. And Larry asks why the street's so empty. And Danny says they have to keep a low profile because they're on the run from Darren Jones. And Darren Jones is getting close. And they're like, well, who's Darren Jones? And Danny flashes up on the wall there a picture of the patch that Larry knows about, of course. And Larry's like, oh, shit. And all of a sudden, we see Larry flash back to the ant farm again and being experimented on. We see him in a room and he's being subjected to extreme cold, down to minus 100, and an extreme hot, like over 200. And of course, nothing's happening to him at all. And at this point, we see the guy that's Forsyth is on the phone, and something emergency is happening. Some emergency is happening, and they need to activate Larry immediately. And we find out what that thing is the Cuban Missile Crisis. And so Forsyth said that, basically Larry is going to be brought in to serve his country and serve it now to get rid of the Red Menace over in Cuba. And they bring in guys in radiation suits that surround Larry, who's tied down to a chair, by the way, and start basically cattle prodding him at that point. So we come back, and then Vic asks, what's the Bureau of Normalcy? And Larry answers and says it's a top secret government agency run by a bunch of demented zealots that stomp out anything they deem as aberrations, which is why they're after Danny at that point. They want to stomp basically anything that's not normal, what they call quote unquote normal. So, yeah. So Agent Wilson says, so we have Maura Lee come back out, and we find out that Maura Lee was Agent Wilson, and that he came in a few years ago, and Danny showed him who his true self was. He felt at ease when he came into town. and he told Danny what was going to happen, and that's why Danny teleported out before anything could happen. So yeah, that was what was going on there. So we go back to Rita, and Rita is trying to talk some sense into Karen, and she's trying to talk Karen out of getting back together with Doug again, and says, how many times can you keep coming back to him? And she goes, oh, don't worry, it's love. Love conquers everything, kind of thing. And all of a sudden, Karen switches over to Hammerhead, and Hammerhead's like, you got to get me the fuck out of here. You got to get us the fuck out of here now. I don't know how much longer I can wrest control from her, but I took over the driver's seat now at this point, and you got to get us the fuck out of here. And she goes on to tell her, you know what? If I get fucked, you get fucked, is what she says. I don't want him anywhere near my bush, is what she says about Doug. I don't want Dougie near my bush, which I was just like, wow, Hammerhead. And all this as she's digging into the refrigerator, she pops open a beer with her teeth, starts drinking the beer and just eating food out of the refrigerator, just stuffing food into her mouth. And she's telling Rita all this stuff. And man, it was it's pretty brutal at that point. And we see, Karen pops back in, and Rita tells Karen, maybe you should try and take it a little slow. And Karen's like, maybe you're right. Maybe I should take it slow. And the next scene is her proposing to Doug to get married then and there that night, that they shouldn't wait. And Doug's family gets up in arms, and they're like, what the hell are you doing? This woman has dumped you multiple times. Every time you get dumped, you spend months in depression. You won't get out of bed. We're not going to be there for you this time around. You know what? If you do this again, we're through. And he goes, and of course, Karen looks at him and goes, you should listen to love. And he says, okay, we'll do it. We're going to get married. Like, what the hell? And we see that Karen turns around, her eyes glow, and she makes everyone else's eyes glow, the family, and they all of a sudden love her. So she's been putting a spell on them. That was the other thing that Hammerhead, by the way, I forgot to mention. Hammerhead mentions that Karen's powers are that she can put a spell on people, make them love them. So yeah, that's the fucked up thing. She does everybody except for Rita at this point. So the whole family love her. Doug loves her. And yeah, some pretty messed up stuff. So Cliff is still standing outside when this kid kind of rides by on a bike, stops, looks at him, and then rides away. And he goes, weird little kid kind of thing, And then we see Larry talking to Agent Wilson or Maura Lee, and asks if the people around him know who he worked for. And he says he tried to tell them at first, but no one would listen. So he just kind of gave up on it and, worked on himself at that point and finding out who he was, and that's where Maura Lee came out. Yeah. And it was kind of his, as he said, the name was kind of the finger to the Bureau that he gave them. So morally corrupt. Yeah, because of all them, Yeah. Anyway. So he also tells them that Danny can jump anywhere in the world. But he also tells them that if the perpetual cabaret stops at any point, the party stops, Danny stops. It's basically his beating heart. So people are kind of dwindling now at this point. They're not, they're hiding out. They're in fear. So they really need to, they really kind of need to start the party back up again and, find Danny's heart again, if you will. So Vic goes outside and says they need to help these people. And Larry's like, I want nothing to do with it. He goes, I want nothing to do with anything the Bureau is doing at this point, anywhere the Bureau is at. He's scared of them, of course. And Vic wants to know why, and Larry kind of sidesteps why, and basically says to Vic, he goes, should I buy the cape before or after I kill my family? He goes, maybe Mr. Nobody was right about you, is what he says. About having a hero complex and all this kind of stuff, and says, should I buy my cape before or after I kill my family? Which is kind of a low blow, to Vic. And Vic's like, you know what? He goes, I'm through trying to stiffen up your spine. And he brushes past Larry, and Larry's like, you know what? I'm through people telling me who I should be. And he walks off in the other direction. So we flash back to the aftermath at the ant farm, and the guys around Larry that came in to cattle prod him are all dead. And Forsyth said, "You know what? I underestimated you. I thought you were just radioactive." He goes, "You're much, much more powerful than that." And of course, Larry goes, "What the hell happened? I don't know. I don't know what happened. What happened?" So Forsyth, excuse me, flips a switch, and he activates a little video monitor that's inside Larry's room and shows him that the entity came out and basically killed all these guys, disintegrating a lot of them actually, and some pretty messed up stuff. And Larry is horrified as to he didn't know this was inside of him, and that's the first time he's actually found out. So yeah, Larry does kind of have a little bit of a point, Slurmy, but he was kind of a dick about it too. That was the only thing. So Rita ends up telling Karen that she's forcing Doug and the family to love her. And of course, Rita's like, "No, I'm not. I'm not doing that." Karen's saying that. "No, I'm not. I'm not doing that at all." And Rita says, "Well, you know what? If you really think that this true love is meant to be, release them from your spell and see what happens. If it's true love, everything will be fine." And that's when Karen turns on Rita and basically says, "You know what? You're a has-been. You're a walking," which I actually had to write it down because she was talking so fast. She was a walking cautionary tale who was way past her prime. And Rita just kind of looks at her and goes, "You're right. I am." And but we don't see Rita melt at this point. Rita basically just kind of brushed it off, which I was kind of surprised. I was like, "Oh wow, okay." So she actually did, heal herself at that point. And I was like, "Damn, she's probably the one that's gonna actually heal everybody else at this point." And Karen apologizes and says, "Oh, I'm sorry. It's just all the stress that's getting to me." She goes, "But we need to get ready. We need to get ready for tonight." And Rita says, "Well, what's going on tonight?" And that's when we see Karen's eyes glow. And of course, she's going to infect Rita now at this point as well. So Cliff is sitting on the stairs outside the house still when the kid on the bike shows back up again, and he's dressed up in a cardboard robot costume with a boombox. And he starts playing some music and doing some robot dancing. And Cliff goes, "Is that all you got?" is what he asks. And the kid says, "Think you can do better?" And Cliff says, "Hey, I've seen Flashdance 87 times. What do you think?" The little Cliff stuff, was kind of making me laugh. I mean, it really was. It was kind of what we needed in between the episode scenes here. So we see in the Perpetual Cabaret, Larry's sitting still in there. And the person that's up on the stage now at this point says, "You know what? It's karaoke time, and new people need to sing." And Larry says, "I don't sing." "Well, come on. You come on up in here and sing." So we see Larry get up on stage and start singing. And as he gets into the song a little bit, he calls up Morally Corrupt. And they start getting into it. And it's, they're singing a really good duet song there. And, well, actually, it's not a duet song. It's a single person song, but they're taking turns singing. And more and more people start coming in and start dancing. It becomes a lively party. We see, confetti coming down, and we switch around and we see that Larry is back. He's got his skin again, dressed in a tuxedo, and he's dancing. And Maura Lee is now in a sequined outfit, and they're doing this big dance number and singing. And all of a sudden it stops, and we see Larry sitting back in the seat again with the microphone by his mouth, being held by the performer. And he says again, "I don't sing," is what he says, and he gets up and leaves the cabaret. Which is almost empty at this point. So yeah, it was kind of fucked up. So Vic sees Larry outside and says, "What are you still doing here?" And Larry says, I really don't know, That's when Agent Wilson comes out, because he has now shed the Maura Lee costume, and he's now Agent Wilson. And he says that he's going to return to the Bureau and fix everything. He said he left it as a mess, and he's going to basically go back to them tell him that he was deep undercover and that he ended up killing Danny. Is what he's going to tell them, so that they can throw the send off Danny at this way. And Danny's like, no, you shouldn't do this. And he's like, yeah, because you showed me a side of myself I didn't know existed. And he says, I can keep up the act. It's not a big deal. You know what? That's all I need to do. So Vic ends up seeing that the Bureau is coming in, and Wilson is going to run a diversion so that Danny can teleport them out. And Danny's like, nope, we're going to stay and fight this time. So Vic's going to join them, and so is Larry at this point too. So we see Wilson comes back in drag, and all the townspeople are behind him as well. And Darren, who was Wilson's boss, has his army behind him, his goons, and basically calls them human trash, is what he says. He says, see these degenerates as human trash. And Darren, Amora Lee says, you know what? For someone so old, you shouldn't be throwing shade like that. Otherwise, you're going to throw your back out. And that's when Darren realizes that's Wilson. And he thinks that Danny was the one that switched Wilson into drag. And says, what has the street done to you? And it didn't do anything. It just revealed who I actually am. And just as Darren is going to, bring his goons in to do everything, Danny teleports them away. Because that's what he can do. He can teleport people in and out. And basically, Wilson beats the shit out of Darren. They have their fight. And Darren takes the first swing, of course. And, Wilson says, didn't your mom ever tell you not to hit a lady? And that's when he just beats the shit out of him. And Darren's down on the ground. He whips out, the baton, the collapsible baton, and Larry steps on his arm and says, get the hell out of here. When you go back to the Bureau, tell him Danny's off the list. And Darren says, you just made the list. He goes, no, I've already been on the list. Tell him that Captain Trainer says hello, and punches Darren and knocks him out. So we see Cliff on the doorstep again. He's telling the kid about his dreams, about being welded. He keeps waking up in between the weldings. And then the welder lifts up their mask, and it's Jennifer Beals. And the kid's like, who? And he goes, come on, really? Yeah, I mean, come on, Cliff. The Last Chance was back in the 80s, man. Kid's not going to know. So Rita comes out and says, oh, she needs Cliff. Oh, good, you're still out here. And she needs him. And so she brings him inside. Then we go back to Danny and Vic. Or actually, we go back to Danny and Vic, and all the folk out there. And they're talking about trying to find Niles. And when Vic mentions Mr. Nobody is involved, Danny's like, nope, can't help you. Need to take a look at these. I need to watch after these people. They're my priority at this point. Mr. Nobody's involved. Can't do anything about it. And Vic's like, just a little bit of help. I just need something just to point me in the right direction. And that's when Danny gives him a comic. It's called Greatest Adventures, with a story called I Made a Deal with Doom. So we are going to finally find out why this place is called Doom Manor, I believe. Finally. So Larry and Vic are transported back to the manor. Larry's actually singing still. We see Larry, he's standing there and he's, primed, he's got the microphone in his hand. And he's singing. And he's like, what, was I that bad? Because, Danny transported him back right in mid-song, which I thought was kind of funny. We're like, nope, we're done. Let's get back inside. So Cliff finds out that Karen and Dougie are getting married. And Karen wants Cliff to give her away. And Cliff's like, I don't think this is right. Have you talked to Jane about this? She goes, Jane doesn't need to know anything about this, is what Karen says. And like, no. I think Jane needs to know about this. And he's trying to get, Jane involved. And that's when Karen decides to try and use her little spell on Cliff, and it doesn't work. And Dougie shows up, and he tries to push Cliff out of the way. And Cliff says, oh, you mean like this? And pushes Dougie off to the side, smashes through some chairs. And he says, you know what? I don't think Jane would like this. So he picks Karen up, and he's taking her out. And she starts kicking and screaming on him. And excuse me, that's when Hammerhead shows up, and Hammerhead knocks him down. And then she's standing there in the wedding dress. She's like, "What the fuck? I told you guys, this is the one I wanted to have happen." And she's really pissed at this point, you know. And she jumps onto Dougie and is going to kill Dougie. She grabs this a piece of the chair, and as she goes, "Goodbye, Dougie," and she's just about to jam it in him when Karen wrenches control back again and starts apologizing. But by this point, the spell has been broken. Doug and his family bolt out of the house. Yeah. And we see Karen all of a sudden get dragged to the underground. We see her, Rita and Cliff are both looking at her, and we get this faraway pan. We see this black border around the outside of the screen, and like her panning away. And then we see that Karen is being dragged down to the underground. And she's like, "You motherfuckers, let go of me." And we see her getting dragged down these tracks. "No, let go." And then we hear Cliff and Rita both saying, "Jane, Jane, are you okay?" And then we see Jane standing there catatonic in a wedding dress. And that's where we leave off on the episode. Pretty damn good episode. Again, there's a lot of exposition on there. I probably could have written 4 pages of notes pretty easily. But yeah, it's really damn good. That's all I can say. And if you're not watching it, you're missing out. That's all I can say on that. Excuse me. So what are you guys talking about here in the chat? I believe I read somewhere Jennifer Beals will be in Swamp Thing. Yes, she is. She is going to be in Swamp Thing, which is kind of funny that they mentioned that. They mentioned her. How many episodes are left in Gotham? Crispy Little Tenders 2. And it doesn't come back until the 18th or something like that. Yeah. And there's one on the 25th as well. That's the last one, the very last one. Where else do we got here? Talking about Love and Death and Robots. Anyone sampled the new Tick yet? Not yet, but that just dropped today. I will be doing that. Viking Bitch says, Cliff went there. I'm picking up that knife and making psycho noises. Yeah, he did. Yeah, when he's talking to Vic, and man, Cliff just does not know when to lay off the gas. He just is full throttle all the time, and especially with Vic. With Vic, he really likes twisting the knife, so to speak. I mean, he puts it in and just keeps twisting. And Vic, doesn't like that. Stormy Scott says, marriage is a big decision. I had a fancy wedding at the UPS store. Nice, man. Yeah, I'm starting to love Hammerhead as well, Viking Bitch. She is a bit of a wild card, but she is the one that is the protector of everyone, is what she's doing. So we need to see some more personalities, though. I mean, seeing Karen was really, wacko and a little bit on the extreme side. I want to see some of the other ones. Penny Farthing was a little too meek. And of course, we've seen Jane, the Jane persona. We haven't seen the real persona as of yet. We've seen the little girl, but we haven't seen who she really is. Okay. I just read about Timothy. Seems obvious who he is. Stanley Tweedle. Okay. That's the other thing too, is I'm kind of wondering how they're going to play out Niles Calder here, because Niles Calder in the comics can go one of 2 ways. He has gone 2 ways in the comics. He has been mysterious benefactor who has altruistic means, kind of like Professor X in a way. And then there is the other Niles Calder, who is an evil son of a bitch, who's basically the one who has fucked over every single one of their lives and caused them to be who they are. For what reason, we don't know. But yeah, I'm kind of wondering which way they're going to go with that. So Mork says Dennis summary: Woody Harrelson in skin tight white jeans, Farscape, some Doom Patrol, sculpted art and balls. Okay, but no donkey balls, huh? All right. But Ted Danson always looked the same. Oh man, I don't want to know. And preferred drag names. This is just going to get weird. I can already see. Stanley Tweedle says Cliff was so adorable in this episode. Yeah, Cliff. Cliff didn't have much to do in this episode, but he was instrumental in ending the episode. Is what we had going on. Next week's episode is Jane Patrol. Sounds promising. You know what? I forgot to watch the preview for next week. That's what I forgot to do right afterwards. Yeah. The whole 64 is bound to get confusing. Yeah, Keto Roan. Having 64 personalities and each of them having superpowers, that's pretty messed up. Keto Roan says, I expect maybe the ones that we've seen already and reveal another one at the end. I think we're going to get an introduction to a good majority of them this time around. They do not skimp. These episodes do not skimp on exposition. They really don't. Like I said, there is a lot of stuff going on to the point where I have to pause repeatedly as I'm taking notes now because I can't do what I normally do with normal episodes where I just write as I'm reading or watching because I miss too much in this. Now I actually have to pause, then do it. Pause, then do it. I'm not going to watch it now, Pen Farm Girl. No. Because I have my TV over here. I have to turn it on, and my remote's on the other side of the room. It's just a pain in the ass, quite honestly. Still 64 persons in 40. Well, it's actually 57 minutes. They've done 57 minutes, Kato. 52 minutes, somewhere around there. I think they can still do it. They don't need to introduce every single one. They can, lump some of them together as to similar. And I'm sure that's what they're doing is, if I remember correctly, when they showed the diagram of her personalities on the wall, some of them are grouped together. Some are their own as well. Slummy Scott says, AB Normal. I remember from him oh yeah, Abby Normal. Abby someone. Abby Normal. Yeah, so a little bit of business. If you like what you see, hit the subscribe button. Also, hit the like button down below as well. If you don't like what you see, hit the dislike button. But I asked if you hit the dislike button in the comment section down below, give me some constructive criticism on what you didn't like. Not just you suck, you asshole, whatever, because that I don't care about. If you want to know when to be on live next, hit the little bell. If you've already hit the bell, don't hit it again. It will unclick it. That should give you a 50-50 chance of YouTube notifying you that I'm on live again. So there we go. You can find all of my scheduling up on suspendedfanimation.com. You can also find me on Facebook. You can find the schedule that's up there as well. And I have an Instagram and I have a Twitter. There we go. Tomorrow is going to be Saturday morning blast off, or as the kids like to call it here, SBO. And that is where I take the genre news of the week and, talk about that and anything else genre you guys want to talk about. Sunday is going to be Love, Death, and Robots. It's going to be that review. Yes. And Monday is going to be The Tick. That's right. We're starting season 2 of The Tick, episode 1. I'm going to go episode by episode on the Amazon show. So there we go. Excuse me there. I need to get a little bit of water. And Wednesday, of course, is Happy, because we're all happy for Happy. And right now, Thursdays is a little bit of a blank wasteland because we're waiting for Gotham to come back. Because the last 2 episodes of Gotham need to come in before I can actually settle on putting something in there. And then, oh my God, we're going to have Game of Thrones starting here fairly soon on Sundays. Yeah, so it's going to get busy again. Yeah. Stormy Scott says, love SBO, best chatting from the best chat on YouTube. Exactly. Although it could be better if we can free the Fanobi. Yeah. Viking Bitch, can you release that zipper on him and he can free the Fanobi that way? Kato Ron says your tick reviews is what got me to subscribe, so I'm happy you're doing them from here now. Yeah, thank you, Kato Ron. I love the tick, man. Tick is one of my favorites, and I'm gonna have to whip out the giant tick. I have a giant tick action figure from the animated series that talks. I don't know if it talks anymore because I think it's kind of burned out a little bit, but I've got it in one of the boxes. I will whip it out, Morks, but that'll be later for a later episode. Hopefully, Fanobi will be unchained by tomorrow. We are lacking in slippery jokes without Fanobi. I know, it's actually clean in here a little bit, a little too clean. I've also got to break out my Hellboy action figure, my extreme Hellboy action figure is what it's called, and put that up because Hellboy is coming up too. Hellboy is released April 12th is what I remember. So it's next Friday. So I know that. Yeah, and then we have, Avengers Endgame, all of that, which you can, if you really want to, go online and buy it for the buy it now price of $15,000. I believe it's in Chicago, and it might not even be on opening night. But I'll talk about that tomorrow morning. A little bit. Tick suck blood. Mork sucks blood. Lots of sucking going on here. Well. Oh, no, never mind. I was going to say something that was going to be really bad, and I caught myself on it. I'm glad I did because, you know what? Just didn't need to go there. Exactly, Morks. No, I wasn't going there. But I know you're on the same wavelength with me on that one, Morks. So I'm glad. Yeah. Anyway, I'm glad everyone liked. Yeah, Slurmy Scott. I knew you were already there. You live down there with me where I'm at. I know. No, I haven't. Sailing Tweedle. 12-year-old boy. That's kind of old. I think it's more along the lines of 8, maybe even 7. Oh, it was going to be another bad joke. And I'm passing through it. Anyway, join me tomorrow for Saturday morning blast off. Man, yeah, Doom Patrol. There we go. Here we go. Doom Patrol. Thank you, everybody in the chat tonight here. I've got Joker the Third, Kato Roan, Morks, Pen Farm Girl, Sculpted Leather Art by Viking Bitch, Slurmy Scott, and Stanley Tweedle, and of course, Crispy Little Tenders, who was in a little bit earlier. Thank you all for joining. I'm going to let you guys go. And like I said before, if you're on the fence, take a look. Actually, I didn't say anything about this. Let me say it right now. If you're still on the fence about subscribing, there's going to be a video that's going to be up here that is going to take one video from my video library. And basically what they're going to do is match it to everything that you've been looking at on YouTube. And they take an algorithm and they pluck the best video that matches your taste from my video library and plops it up there. And if you like what you see, you can hit the subscribe button. That's going to be over here. So there we go. So with that said, thank you, everyone. I'll see you tomorrow morning. Don't let the door hit your ass on the way out. Otherwise, you may end up engaged to that same woman over a dozen times, which doesn't sound pleasant. Good night, everyone.